Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Weekly Crop, and this week I am genuinely excited to talk about this fun little product because it is something I've wanted for my very own kit for quite a while, and we just got some in this morning. I was super stoked. I didn't know it was coming, but it is the CineEye by Accsoon. So if you don't know what this is, let me give you a little primer. If you wanted to transmit a signal from your camera, whether it would be a mirrorless camera or a cinema camera, video camera, whatever it is, before, you needed a fairly expensive transmitter receiver pack, and those are typically or more commonly known as Teradeks. That's the brand name, but there's a whole host of other companies that make them. And that was always sort of a bit of a price excluder for a lot of independent shooters because they couldn't really justify getting a big system like that because you still needed a separate monitor, maybe even a client monitor like a 17 or 21 inch or something like that. So it just seemed like a bit overboard for something that they just wanted some level of remote monitoring. And now CineEye has kind of come in and given you an option for a fairly inexpensive price point, just under $300 Canadian. And the way this works is that you basically plug this in to your camera. That it needs to have an HDMI port, which basically every camera does. Whether it's mini, micro, or full HDMI, it will accommodate all of those. And then the signal gets broadcast to this guy, your mobile device. So whether you're using a mobile phone, whether it be Android or iOS, and then as well that will include any tablets that run on those two platforms as well. And not only does it just transmit the video signal, but it gives you a whole host of other things that like professional monitoring will give you. So it's going to give you things like focus peaking, it's going to give you things like false color, histogram, and even better, it's got LUT support, which is super, super cool, and a whole host of other things. We're going to get to that. I'm going to show you all that. But let's open the box, let's put this thing together, let's get it running, and show you what it can do, all right? Let's do this. Okay, to get started, all you need are the three things in front of me. You need your CineEye transmitter. You need a mobile device running either iOS or Android. I've got my iPhone XR here. And then, of course, you need a camera, right? So, without further ado, let's get the party started. Let's look inside. And first off, we're going to have the transmitter. I like this transmitter for two reasons. One is, I am a little clumsy, as you probably all know, and I like the fact that despite its 175 grams, that it's a pretty solid casing on here. It's not a thin little cheap plastic casing, so I know that if it gets banged around in my kit a lot, that it's not going to fall apart into a million different pieces, so durability is important to me. I also like the quarter 20 on the bottom. It's natural that it's going to come with a quarter 20, and it's got a cold shoe adapter that you can slide right onto your camera that comes with the kit. But what I like even more about that is that you have a nice flush back to this, because more often than not, I'm not rigging it to the top of my camera. What if it was on a gimbal? It's not going to work on top of my camera, which means that I'm going to have to find some other way of attaching it. And that's typically done through Velcro or hook and stitch fabric. I don't know if I'm allowed to say Velcro. And with hook and stitch or Velcro, you can kind of stick it wherever you want, regardless of your camera system. So I love that it's a nice clean flat back for that purpose. So to get this guy going, we need a few other things that are in the box. Let's dig into the box and see what we have. As I mentioned, it's fully HDMI compatible, regardless of your format. So today we're using a Sony mirrorless camera here, which uses micro HDMI, so it comes with our micro HDMI. And then we've got both our standard, our sort of full, and our mini HDMI. So we've got those with the kit as well. In addition to that, we have in the kit is a USB-C. And what the USB-C is obviously used for is going to be to charge the transmitter, but you can use it to power the transmitter as well. So if you have a mobile battery bank that runs 2 amps, you can power the unit from that separate battery bank, or you can power it directly into an AC, as far as I know. So definitely with the battery bank. Sometimes AC can work a little bit weird in terms of what's happening with the voltage. I know some products, yes, some products know that needs to be tested, but 100% this will work off the battery bank for sure. So that's a good thing to know. And then, as I mentioned previously, it's going to come with the cold shoe adapter and just some spacers to be able to snug that up. And like I said as well, in terms of other rigging, you're going to be able to put anything in the quarter 20. So whether that's going to be an articulating arm, lots of options. You're not stuck just with the cold shoe, obviously. So let's get this thing powered up and going. Okay, to get things started, I've just mounted onto the cold shoe of my mirrorless camera. But before we get too far into the features, I do want to tell you a little bit about the transmitter itself. So we're going to open up the antennas, and the range on this guy tends tends to be about a maximum of 100 meters, so about 300 feet. And that's sort of best case scenario. Most users are reporting it to be pretty reliable up until about the 70, 80 meter mark. Most users, I think, will be working with this comfortably within the 30 to 40 meter mark. So I think it's, transmits far enough for 99% of users in most cases. Now, when we look at the body of the transmitter itself, we've got our USB in right here. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, is going to both charge the battery internal with the transmitter, but will also give you your power in if you're using an external battery pack. And a little note on the battery here lasts about 4 hours. Now, we understand that a lot of people have a long shoot day, maybe 8 to 12 hours. So there's two ways of approaching this. One is make sure you turn your transmitter off when you're not using it. So when you're just idle or blocking a scene or whatever the case is. Or the next thing would be obviously to use an external battery power pack. And then you're going to have to attach that to your rig somehow as well. So just keep that in mind. When we turn to the other side of the transmitter, we're looking at our HDMI in and our power button. It's the front of the pack that actually tells the story about what's happening with the transmission. So first off, when we power it up, you just have to hold this for a few seconds. We have a 4-dot LED that will give us our battery strength. And then the A will light up. Now, the A color and it's sort of blinking or solid will indicate a number of things. When it's blinking, it just tells you that the transmitter itself is booting up. If you get a solid red, that just means that there is no HDMI signal to be found. If you get a solid white, that means that your signal is present. And so if you're not getting a signal onto your phone when that's white, that means there's likely a problem on the phone side or you're just not connected to the Wi-Fi. And then if you're any reason that you need to reset the device itself, you just need like a little pin or a paper clip, and into a little hole here, you'll be able to reset the device. And that means that the little red A will blink, and that just tells you the device is resetting. It's rare that you'll need to do that, but just so you know what that does. So to get it started, I've powered it up, and that's going to start driving that Wi-Fi signal. So I need to make sure that I get an actual HDMI signal into the unit. Now, I've got it facing here so that you can see all of this, but this HDMI cable is not quite long enough for my Sony camera here, so I'm just going to flip it around. And that's actually what you want. It might seem like, oh, it's too bad that it's not long enough, but really it's just about which direction this faces, and that doesn't have any sort of performance issues. So you really want a shorter cable because that just means less mess and less dealing with tangles and all that type of thing. So I'm going to now put that in, and I'm going to turn on my camera. And I'm just going to wait to hear it. Great. And so now my A has gone from a solid red to a solid white. And that tells me that it is receiving the HDMI signal from my camera. The next thing you want to do is connect to the Wi-Fi. I'm going to connect to my Wi-Fi. I've connected to it once before, so it's already recognizing the CineEye Wi-Fi, which is great. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the app. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is that when I went into the App Store on iOS to get the app and I searched Accsoon, one selection did come up for an app, and I was a little confused because there's a picture of a gimbal. Accsoon has other products, but this is the one app that does it all. So if you want the CineEyes to work, this is the app despite the logo being a gimbal. So we're going to click on that. And it will bring us up to the A1 series gimbal, which we're not talking about today. We're going to now swipe, and we're going to find our CineEye. And we're just going to hit the button here, and it's going to ask us if we want to connect with it. And we say monitor, and bam, we are live. Now, the screen is going to be black right away. As you can see, I've got a black screen. That's because I haven't turned it on. So the first thing we're going to do is turn it on. And there we go. Now we're on, and we've got a number of functions available to us. So I'm going to go through all this really quick. First off, you've got black and white or grayscale if you want to work in black and white mode. You've got your RGB, which means it allows you to choose the red signal, green signal, or blue signal. Some people really like this because a lot of noise can live in the blue color signal, and this will just kind of let you see a little bit more of what that noise is doing. So next up, you've got your peaking. So you've got your high frequency or low frequency. And then you can change that to green, blue, or white. Pretty standard across the board amongst most professional monitors. Then we've got our false color. So we even got a scale on it to tell us where our gray point is, where our 80%, where our 90%, and all those types of different exposure gradients are. We've got our histogram. It's an 8-bit histogram, but you can move it around, kind of get it out of the way, which I really like. Tuck it into the corner, you know, that kind of thing. So it's super helpful that way. It's not in the way. We've got your zebras. And with your zebras, you actually have a little level indicator there too, so you know what level your zebras are sitting at. And then the last but not least, I really like the LUT system here. So the LUT bank is empty currently. Now, with the Android architecture, it's pretty easy in the file structure to be able to drop that in. With iOS, what I've been told is that to get the file into there, you need to email yourself the LUT, and then through your email, you need to copy and paste it into the LUT directory. So it's a little bit of a backdoor way to get it to work on iOS, but I've been assured that it works flawlessly. So then we're going to go into the more functionality here, which allows you to have center markers, safe markers, so just all your different sort of crop lines there, and then your ratios, so whether you're doing 235:1 or any one of these other aspect ratios. You've got your mark width. Zoom function, of course, is really important. Being able to punch in and zoom while you're adjusting your focus, and then your sort of squishiness if you need to. This will compress things, especially if you're using anamorphic aids in that. And then sort of your transparency, which I'm not entirely sure that I know what that does, if it's like an overlay image. Here's where you can modify your Wi-Fi, so you can change your password if you like. You can modify the name of the Wi-Fi as well, and change your channel, so to go from either auto or just to surf to a different channel. Your color range from full to video range. And last but not least, this thing in Chinese is your Waveform Monitor, which you can't move around, but you can toggle on and off. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so the latency with this guy is about 2 frames, which is not terribly bad. All that does mean, though, is that you probably don't want to drive critical focus off of this guy. But where I do see the application being super valuable is for some of the independent shooters out there. Typically, when you're working at weddings or corporate work or anything like that, or even just sort of fun passion project work, to be able to hand this to a director, especially if you're operating a camera, whether it's on a gimbal or handheld or wherever, typically what you've had to do is you had to have the director kind of over your shoulder following you around, you know, are you getting the shot that I want? Go left, go right. And that can kind of really, you know, barrier you in as a shooter. And so to be able to hand the director a smartphone or a tablet or be able to use their very own is super handy, because it kind of frees up the shooter, and it brings a lot of value to your set as well. It allows for communication to really improve between you and your director. So I think that's super important, or you and your client. The next thing is, not all cameras come with exposure tools. Certainly some do, like the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras and the GH5, but not all come with things like waveform monitors or false color, and that brings that to your shooting protocol, whatever camera that you are using. So that's super handy as well. All told, for under $300, you get a really, really neat device that will do multiple devices. So you can have one for your director, one hooked up to your rig, for example, one to a client, one to a friend, one to the production assistant eating at the craft table, whatever it is. You can do, I think, up to like 4 or 5 devices with this guy. So super, super handy. And it's one of the reasons why I've wanted one of these for such a long time. So super cool. We're super excited to have it here in store. If you want to know more about it, please give us a call here at one of our stores or visit us online at vistek.ca. But that is it for me, guys. Thanks so much for watching this week. Stay tuned for more next week. Until then, go out there, have some fun, and happy shooting.